It was a chilly evening in the heart of the city, the streets bathed in the glow of streetlights, flickering against the dusk. A homeless boy, no older than 14, sat on the cold concrete near a high-end shopping district. His threadbare jacket barely protected him from the harsh wind that swept through the streets. His eyes, filled with a quiet sorrow, scanned the bustling crowds. There was no pity in their gaze, just a sea of indifferent faces passing by, oblivious to his existence. Yet, amidst this cold, unfeeling world, the boy had a secret. He had a voice that could stop time, one that could draw tears from the hardest of hearts. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, he opened his mouth to sing, his voice rich and full of emotion, telling stories of hardship, dreams, and hope. His music echoed in the alleys, unnoticed by most, but for those who listened closely, it was the only thing that felt real. Little did anyone know, that voice would soon captivate the elite of society at a grand gala, where fate would intervene in ways no one could foresee. The boy's song seemed to linger in the air long after he stopped. The bustling streets never stopped moving, but the melody seemed to wrap itself around the cold night, unnoticed by most. As he closed his eyes, a few curious passers-by slowed down, unsure of what had caught their attention. But, as quickly as they stopped, they resumed walking. His voice, now barely a whisper, held no place in their world. However, one man dressed in an expensive suit stood across the street and listened intently. His features were sharp, his hair silvered, his face aged, but still strikingly handsome. The boy could feel the weight of his gaze, a gaze that seemed to cut through the noise of the city and see him for who he truly was. For a moment, it felt as though time slowed. The man's presence felt different, like someone who understood struggle. The boy's heart skipped a beat, but before he could process his thoughts, the man turned and disappeared into the night. The boy watched him go, wondering if he would ever be seen again, or if he would simply remain another ghost in the city. The night went on, and the boy, now lost in thought, stayed on the street corner. His breath visible in the cold air, he tried to shake off the unsettling feeling that the man had left him with. But before he could dwell too much on it, the faint sound of a car door closing snapped him out of his trance. The man was back. He was walking toward him now, slow and deliberate, his footsteps echoing in the empty street. For a moment, the boy considered running, disappearing into the shadows, but something kept him rooted to the spot. As the man approached, he smiled faintly, his expression warm yet distant. "You sing well," the man said, his voice deep and commanding. "What's your name?" The boy looked up at him, unsure whether to respond. But something in the man's gaze told him this wasn't just a casual compliment. There was something more, a curiosity that matched his own. Reluctantly he answered, "No one would care about a name like mine." The man chuckled softly, shaking his head. "I beg to differ." The man continued to watch the boy for a moment, as if measuring him. "I've seen many people like you," the man said, his voice a little softer now. "People with stories that deserve to be heard. And I believe you have one. But," he paused, glancing around, "this city is full of noise. Everyone's too busy to listen to the ones who really matter." The boy's heart skipped a beat. Was the man offering him something? Or was this just another empty conversation, another fleeting moment in a sea of forgotten words? The man stepped closer, his tone now quieter, almost conspiratorial. "There's a place tonight where people will listen, a gala for charity. People who can help." The boy felt a spark of hesitation in his chest. He had never been to a place like that, never even imagined a world like that. "Why would they listen to me?" the boy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The man smiled knowingly. "Because you have something they can't buy." The boy hesitated. His life had been a series of struggles, every day a fight for survival. The idea of stepping into a world of wealth, charity, and elegance felt like a dream too far-fetched. But there was something in the man's eyes, a quiet intensity that spoke of promises and opportunities. After a long pause, the boy nodded, though uncertainty lingered in his heart. "I'll go," he muttered. The man smiled, nodding as well. Good. The world has a way of forgetting people like you, but I believe it's time they remember. The man handed the boy a small card with an address and a time. Come, and you'll see what I mean. With that, the man turned and walked away, leaving the boy standing alone on the street corner. He looked at the card, then back at the empty streets, the sounds of the city fading as he made his way toward the unknown. The boy stood at the edge of the sidewalk, the small card burning a hole in his pocket. His fingers gripped it tightly as he stared at the grand entrance of the Gala Hall. He had never been to such a place. The towering columns, the golden lights, the lavish cars pulling up in front, all seemed out of reach, like a world he would never belong to. He had no intention of attending such an event. It was a world of privilege and luxury that seemed foreign and distant. Yet the man's words echoed in his mind, "You have something they can't buy." He wanted to believe it, but fear gnawed at him. Would he be welcomed, or would he simply be another forgotten face in a sea of wealth? The decision lingered, but deep inside, a small spark of hope flickered. Taking a deep breath, he crossed the street, every step bringing him closer to the unknown. The doors of the Gala seemed to open to him, but at the same time they felt like a trap, tempting him into a world that would never understand his struggles. Inside the Gala, the boy hesitated at the entrance. A doorman, impeccably dressed in a tuxedo, regarded him for a moment, his eyes scanning the boy from head to toe. "Are you lost?" the doorman asked with a raised eyebrow. The boy swallowed hard, fumbling with the card the man had given him. He felt the weight of the situation pressing in, but his resolve hardened. He had come this far. I'm here for the performance," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The doorman, clearly skeptical, hesitated, then glanced at the card in the boy's hand. A slight nod followed, and the boy was allowed to pass. As he stepped inside, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses surrounded him, but he felt strangely out of place. The grand hall was a world of opulence, chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, walls adorned with gold, and guests dressed in their finest attire. The boy stood at the edge, feeling the weight of every eye that passed over him, yet no one acknowledged him. He felt invisible, a mere shadow in the midst of such grandeur. But somewhere in the back of the room, the man in the suit stood watching him, his gaze intense, knowing. The boy shuffled through the crowd, trying to stay out of sight. He had no idea where he was supposed to go, or what he was supposed to do. He found himself near the stage, where a grand piano sat, gleaming under the spotlight. The thought of performing there, in front of all these people, seemed absurd. But before he could back away, the man in the suit appeared beside him. "You're here," he said, his voice calm yet filled with a quiet urgency. The boy turned to him, surprised. I don't belong here," he whispered. "These people they're not like me." The man smiled, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Everyone has a place. You just need to take the first step. Go on, show them what you're made of." The boy hesitated but then nodded. The man handed him a microphone, and the boy, heart racing, stepped up to the stage. He could feel the eyes of the entire room on him as he grasped the microphone. The pressure was overwhelming, but deep inside, a voice told him that he had to sing, that this moment was his. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to sing. The first note escaped the boy's lips, and the room fell silent. The soft, haunting melody filled the space, weaving through the air like a thread of pure emotion. For a moment, he forgot where he was, who he was. All that mattered was the music, the emotions it carried. His voice was raw, unpolished, yet undeniably beautiful. It rang out with an intensity that sent shivers down the spines of those listening. He felt a weight lift off his shoulders as he sang, the years of hardship, the loneliness, all poured into his performance. Slowly, the audience began to react. A few guests exchanged glances, surprised by the boy's talent. One woman dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Another man, leaning forward, studied the boy as if searching for something more. The boy sang on, lost in the music, unaware of the storm he was about to unleash. As the final note hung in the air, there was a moment of silence. The boy opened his eyes, unsure of what had just happened. The room was still, the air thick with anticipation. And then slowly, a few claps broke the silence. The applause grew louder, and soon the entire room was on its feet, applauding him. He stood frozen, unable to comprehend the sudden recognition. This was not the same crowd that had ignored him earlier. They were applauding him, not out of obligation, but out of genuine admiration. The boy's heart raced, his chest tightening with a mix of emotions. He had done it. He had sung in front of them, and they had heard him. But, among the clapping, he saw the man in the suit standing at the back of the room, his expression unreadable. It wasn't just about the applause, it was about something deeper. Something he had yet to understand. The boy's life was about to change forever. The applause eventually faded, but the boy's mind remained in a whirlwind. He stood at the edge of the stage, still processing what had just happened. His hands shook slightly as he clutched the microphone, unsure of how to react. The man in the suit approached him, his footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet of the room. "You did well," the man said, his voice smooth but carrying an edge of something deeper. The boy looked up at him, still lost in the after effects of his performance. I've never done something like this before," he stammered, his voice trembling. The man smiled faintly, his eyes piercing. "You've always had it in you. You just needed the right moment." The boy glanced around, feeling out of place amidst the wealth and luxury of the guests. "But this isn't my world. I don't belong here," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. The man's gaze hardened. "Everyone has a place, some just need a little help finding it." The boy wasn't sure what to make of the words. Something about them felt off, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Later that evening, the boy found himself seated at a table in the grand hall, the noise of the gala washing over him. He picked at a small plate of food, barely tasting it, as he replayed his performance in his head. The applause had been intoxicating, but now, it left him with an unsettling feeling. Something didn't sit right. The man had been too persistent, too insistent that he belonged here. And then there was the subtle pressure he'd felt to sing, to perform. It felt like more than just a casual opportunity. As he looked around the room, he realized that everyone had been watching him. He had been a spectacle, a show for their entertainment. He felt like a puppet, a tool for something he didn't understand. Just then, the man approached him again, his eyes intense, unreadable. "Enjoying the party?" the man asked, his voice smooth as ever. The boy forced a smile. "It's a lot to take in," he said. The man's lips curled into a faint smile. "You've done well tonight, but there's much more to this world if you're willing to embrace it." The boy couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As the evening wore on, he became increasingly aware of the subtle glances and whispers exchanged between the guests. They were talking about him, he was sure of it. He had become the center of attention, not for his talent, but for his strange presence in their world. At first, it had felt like a dream, a moment where he was seen, where his voice had meaning. But now, it felt more like a trap. The man's words echoed in his mind. "You just needed the right moment." But what if that moment was never meant to help him, but to use him? What if he was nothing more than a pawn in a game he didn't understand? He couldn't stand it anymore. He excused himself from the table, his heart pounding in his chest. He needed to get away, to find some air, to clear his mind. He pushed through the crowded room, making his way to the back door of the gala hall. The cool night air hit the boy's face as he stepped outside. He breathed deeply, trying to calm the storm inside him. He leaned against the wall of the gala hall, staring up at the night sky, the stars dimmed by the city's lights. The weight of everything was too much. The performance, the applause, the strange man, it was all too much. He had been thrust into a world he didn't belong to, a world that seemed to see him as nothing more than an object, a momentary diversion. But it wasn't just the people in the gala that bothered him. It was the man. There was something about him, something hidden beneath the surface, that made the boy uneasy. The man had offered him more than just fame or wealth. He had offered him a life, a future. But was it really his to take? Was this what he wanted, or had he been swept up in a fantasy he didn't understand? Just as he was about to turn and leave, the man appeared beside him. "You ran off too soon," he said, his voice calm, like nothing had changed. "We were just getting started." The boy turned to face the man, his chest tight with emotions he couldn't fully express. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice laced with frustration. "I'm not some charity case. I'm not some object for your amusement." The man's eyes flickered with something. Surprise? Pity. "Hell. I'm not using you," he said calmly. "I see potential in you more than anyone else here ever will. I'm giving you a chance to belong, to have everything you've ever wanted." The boy shook his head. "I don't need your handouts. I just want to know the truth. Who are you really? Why did you bring me here?" The man stepped closer, his presence imposing, but there was something almost comforting about his tone. "I'm someone who understands. Someone who can offer you more than you can imagine. But you have to trust me." The boy stood still, unsure whether to believe him or walk away forever. He wanted to walk away, to return to the streets he knew. But something in the man's words held him captive. A choice loomed before him, one he had to make. But was it the right one? The boy spent the next few days wrestling with the decision. He stayed away from the Gala, from the man, trying to return to his old life on the streets. But nothing felt the same. The city, once familiar and comforting, now felt like a foreign place. The memory of the Gala lingered like a dream he couldn't shake. The faces of the guests, the man's voice, all floating in his mind. Each time he tried to ignore it, the nagging feeling returned, a sense of something he couldn't escape. He spent his nights huddled in corners, listening to the distant hum of the city. But even in the quiet of his solitude, he couldn't find peace. The man's words echoed, "Everyone has a place. Some just need a little help finding it." The boy knew he couldn't live like this forever. A part of him longed for more, for a chance to escape the cycle of poverty, to find something greater than survival. But the fear of losing himself in that world kept him from reaching out. Days passed, and the boy found himself caught between two worlds, the cold streets he had known all his life, and the mysterious allure of the life the man had promised him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the Gala, the applause, the people who had looked at him with admiration, as if he were someone important. But then he'd open his eyes, and it would all feel like a distant dream, one that could slip away as quickly as it had come. He knew he couldn't live in this in-between space forever. One night, as the wind howled through the alleyways, he stood on a rooftop, looking out over the city. The lights below seemed like an unreachable world, but the memory of the man's offer tugged at him. He wondered if it was possible to have both, to keep his roots and the freedom of his old life while embracing the opportunity that had been offered to him. But a deeper voice inside told him that he couldn't. If he stepped into the world the man had shown him, he would have to leave the streets behind, and perhaps even himself. Unable to shake the internal struggle, the boy finally decided to meet the man again. He found himself standing outside the Gala venue once more, the same doorman at the entrance. This time, the boy didn't hesitate. He walked inside with purpose, no longer an unsure child, but someone ready to make a choice. The man was waiting for him near the stage, his usual calm demeanor unshaken by the boy's sudden appearance. "You've come back," he said, a hint of approval in his voice. The boy nodded, his eyes hardening. "I need to understand why you brought me here," he said, his voice steady but filled with the weight of his inner conflict. The man smiled, a knowing glint in his eye. "I didn't bring you here. You came because you have potential. You just needed the right circumstances to realize it." The boy shook his head. "No. I need to know the truth. What do you really want from me?" The man's gaze softened, but there was no mistaking the steel beneath it. "What I want is simple. I want to give you a chance. But you have to want it too." The boy swallowed hard. The decision was his, but it felt impossible to make. As the conversation between the boy and the man continued, the boy's frustration boiled over. You don't get it, he said, his voice cracking. I'm not like you. I don't fit into your world. I've lived on the streets all my life. This life isn't mine. The man's eyes never wavered, his calmness in stark contrast to the boy's rising agitation. You're not like me, the man said quietly. But that doesn't mean you don't belong here. You're stronger than you think. You've had to survive where most would have given up. That's the kind of strength that matters in this world. What you've seen, what you've experienced, it all has value. But you have to let go of the past to move forward. The boy clenched his fists, his frustration growing. You don't understand, he said through gritted teeth. I can't just forget everything. I can't forget where I came from. The man's gaze softened, but his words were firm. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to embrace who you truly are, and to step into the future with that strength. The boy turned away, the weight of the decision heavier than ever. He had to choose. But the question lingered. Could he really leave behind the world he had known? The boy walked out of the gala hall that night with no clear answers, his mind clouded with doubts and fears. The man's words still echoed in his head, but they no longer provided the comfort they once had. Instead, they felt like chains, pulling him in two directions at once. He walked the streets again, but this time, everything seemed different. The noise of the city felt louder, more oppressive. The shadows of the alleyways seemed deeper, more suffocating. He didn't know where to go anymore. Could he really leave the streets behind? Could he step into the world the man had shown him, a world of privilege and power? Or would he forever remain on the outside, a ghost in the city? The boy knew that the time to decide was coming closer. His choices were becoming clearer, and with them the cost of each path. The boy's internal battle had reached its breaking point. He wandered the streets aimlessly, his thoughts as tangled as the paths he walked. The world he had once known felt like a distant memory, and the future the man had promised seemed more like a prison than a chance. He could no longer ignore the truth gnawing at him. The man was not offering him a way out, he was offering a way in. A way into a world of manipulation and control. The boy had been raised to survive on his own, to trust no one, and to rely solely on his instincts. But the more he thought about the man's words, the more he began to see the shadows of the truth. The man wanted to use him, not for his talent, not for his voice, but for his struggle, his story. The boy had been a symbol, a means to an end, not a person. This realization hit him like a cold wave, and for the first time in days he felt a sense of clarity. He needed to know everything. He had to find the answers to the questions that haunted him. Who was the man really? What did he want? And why had he targeted him? The boy returned to the gala, his mind made up. He needed to confront the man, to force him to reveal the truth. He couldn't keep living in uncertainty, trapped by his own fear. As he walked through the grand doors once again, the sounds of the gala felt distant, as if he were no longer a part of this world. The boy scanned the room, his eyes searching for the man. He finally spotted him near the back, surrounded by a group of wealthy patrons. The man's face was calm, but there was something about him that made the boy's skin crawl. He made his way through the crowd, not caring who saw him, his heart racing with every step. When the man finally saw him, his expression was unreadable. "You've come back," the man said, his voice smooth but with a hint of something darker lurking behind it. "I told you there's more waiting for you here." The boy clenched his fists, his anger rising. "I want answers. Now." The man's gaze softened slightly, though there was no mistaking the hard edge in his voice. "You want answers," he said, stepping closer. "I've given you everything you need. Your talent, your story. That's what they wanted. That's what I wanted." The boy's chest tightened. "You don't get it," he said, his voice rising. "I'm not a story. I'm not a tool for you to use." The man's smile was thin, almost cruel. "Everyone is a tool, boy. Everyone has a purpose. Your purpose just happens to be bigger than most." The boy shook his head, the weight of the man's words sinking in. "So that's it? You've been using me? All this time just to make me a pawn in your game?" The man's smile faded, his expression turning more serious. "It's not just about using you, it's about what you can become. What you can offer the world. You were never meant to be ordinary." The boy's anger flared. "I don't want to be special. I just want to be free." The man stepped back, his face betraying no emotion. "If you want freedom," he said softly, "then leave, walk away. But understand this, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, you will always be a part of this world. The world you were born into will never let you go. You will always be bound by the chains of your past." The boy stood there trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of the man's words. He had never felt so trapped, so powerless. Everything the man said made sense. His past had shaped him, had shaped everything about his life. But it wasn't the chains of his past that he was afraid of. It was the future. The future the man had promised him. Would it be any different, or would it only serve to bind him in new ways? He wanted to walk away, to leave it all behind. But the thought of returning to the streets, to a life he had outgrown, terrified him. The boy walked away from the man, each step heavy with the weight of his decision. He could hear the voices of the Gala behind him, but they grew fainter with every step. As he exited the building, the cool night air hit him like a slap in the face. The city was vast, stretching endlessly in every direction, and for the first time, he realized just how small he felt. There was a freedom in walking away, but it wasn't the kind of freedom he had imagined. It was a freedom that came with loss, with uncertainty. The boy knew that he could never go back to his old life, not in the way it had been. And yet he couldn't bring himself to step into the world the man had promised. The future was an unknown, and it was terrifying. He paused on the sidewalk, staring up at the skyline. He was no longer the boy who had stood on the street corner, singing for change. But what was he now? The answer was elusive, and it left him with a deep, aching emptiness. The boy wandered through the cold streets, the weight of his decision pressing on him. The city, once familiar, now felt distant, its harsh lights and towering buildings closing in on him. He could no longer deny it. Both paths seemed impossible. He had tasted something more at the Gala, but it wasn't a world he belonged to. The man's words kept echoing in his mind. "You'll always be part of this world." But the boy didn't know if he could walk away from his roots, or if he could even fit into the life the man had promised. The conflict raged inside him. Was there truly a place for him in either world? The boy paused outside a familiar corner of the city, a place that once felt like home. The run-down buildings and flickering neon lights were reminders of his past. But now they seemed like a safe haven, a place to hide from his inner conflict. But even here he couldn't escape the reality. He couldn't go back. He had outgrown this life. Yet, stepping into the man's world was just as terrifying. A feeling of being trapped lingered, the boy unsure of which path to take. Would embracing a new life be worth the cost of leaving everything he knew? The boy's mind raced, torn between two options: return to the streets, his familiar struggle, or step into a world of power and opportunity with the man's promises. Both felt equally suffocating. Sitting on the curb, he closed his eyes, imagining himself in the Gala, admired and powerful. Then he imagined himself back in the streets, free but alone. The question nagged at him: which choice would give him peace? The boy's thoughts were interrupted when the man appeared before him, calm as ever. "I knew you'd return," he said, his voice smooth. "You don't have to make this decision alone." The boy stood, frustration building. "I don't need you to decide for me," he snapped. "I just want to know the truth. What do you really want from me?" The man's expression softened, but his words remained firm. "I'm offering you everything. You can belong, have power, a future." The boy's anger flared. "No, I want to be free." The man said nothing more, his eyes cold as he turned and walked away. The boy was left standing alone, feeling both more lost and more certain than ever. The boy watched the man walk away, his chest heavy with the weight of his choice. As the man's figure disappeared into the night, the boy felt the pull of both worlds. He could go back to the life he knew, but it felt like running away. Stepping into the man's world seemed just as suffocating. The boy took a deep breath and began walking, not knowing where it would lead, but determined to face it on his own terms. For the first time he realized that whatever came next, he would have to decide who he wanted to be. And no one could choose that for him. The boy walked the familiar streets, but everything felt different now. The city had changed, or maybe it was just him. He had stepped into a world of possibilities at the Gala, but now he wasn't sure where he belonged. The memories of the night echoed in his mind. His voice had been heard, his talent recognized, but at what cost? He was no longer the boy who lived in the shadows, but the weight of the decision still lingered. He wondered if he could ever go back to the life he once knew, or if he was now forever changed by the taste of something bigger. One evening, the boy found himself standing at the edge of a local stage, watching others perform. His heart raced with nerves, but this time it wasn't fear. It was something deeper, the need to find his voice again. He stepped forward, his eyes on the spotlight. As he took his place, he realized that the fear he once had about being seen no longer controlled him. His voice, once a tool of survival, was now his expression, and it was something he wanted to share with the world. As the boy began to sing, his voice flowed freely. Each note carried the weight of his past, but it wasn't a cry for help anymore. It was his truth, raw and unfiltered. He could feel the audience connect with him, not just as a performer, but as someone who had lived, struggled, and overcome. For the first time, the boy realized that the power of his voice wasn't about pleasing others. It was about standing tall and being heard on his own terms. When the performance ended, the applause was overwhelming. The boy stood still, absorbing the recognition, but there was no joy in the noise. Instead, a sense of calm settled over him. As the crowd slowly dispersed, he saw the man from the Gala standing in the back. He walked toward him, his footsteps measured. "You found your place," the man said. "I found my own," the boy replied, his voice steady. With a final glance at the man, the boy turned and walked away, knowing he had made the right choice, a choice that was entirely his. The boy left the Gala that night, his heart no longer heavy with doubt. He walked through the quiet streets, the city now feeling more like a canvas than a cage. He had stepped into the unknown, embraced his talent, and learned to stand tall. The journey wasn't over, but the boy knew he was ready for whatever came next. He didn't need to be part of anyone's story, he had his own to write.